Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. This is Mackenzie and tonight we are going to be diving into some real paranormal encounters. Alright, to preface this story, last Halloween I did a video where I was reading scary skinwalker stories from Reddit and you guys seem to really like it, so I figured with Halloween coming up right around the corner again, this would be the perfect time to do it again. So this year we're going to be diving into some paranormal and ghost encounters that I have found on Reddit, and let's just get right into it. Alright, so I have my laptop right on my lap here, so that is why I'm going to be looking down so I can read these stories. I was finding these last night and you guys, I was terrified to go to bed. I had to do one of those things where after you watch a scary movie, you need to watch SpongeBob or some shit to lighten the mood. That's what I had to do. So this first story is from Reddit user confused_muse_2 and it was posted 9 hours ago. This story is circa 1993. My wife and I have told other people, believing that our children did not remember what happened, but quite recently my daughter brought it up and added more details that we did not know until now. From the time that my wife moved into the house, we could tell that there was something off. The previous tenants had left suddenly. Every bathroom cabinet was full of prescription and over-the-counter medications and toiletries. The cabinets in the kitchen still had dishes in them. And they had left an expensive leather coat and top-of-the-line cowboy hat in the master bedroom. The landlord, a police officer on the local force, said that one day they were there and the next, they were gone. He had tried unsuccessfully to find them, using all the resources that he had at his disposal, with no luck. Still, it was a roof over our heads and her now ex-husband. Okay, this confuses me when I was reading this the first time. I was like, okay, you're talking about your wife and you're talking about your ex-husband. Follow me and see how this gets weird. Still, it was a roof over their heads and her now ex-husband insisted that they were making a big deal out of nothing. We could see a bluish mist out of our peripheral vision, but nothing there when we turned our heads. This leads me to believe that the current husband, the ex-husband, and the current wife are all sharing a household, which is fine, but I just thought that was funny. I don't know if that's the case, but that's the way it seems based off how they wrote it. Anyways, alright. Back to the story. We would see a bluish mist out of our peripheral vision, but nothing there when we turned our heads. Cold spots everywhere, even with a wood-burning stove cranking out the heat full blast. Unexplained noises. Every seeming trope about a haunted house, but he didn't see it, so it wasn't real. We stopped trying to discuss it with him and never discussed it when the children were around. This night started like any other. We fed the kids, bathed them, and sent them upstairs to their room to play for a bit before bed. While we studied, we could hear them walking around above our heads as they played since their room was directly above the dining room. Suddenly, all four of them began to scream, the sound of terror echoing down the stairs. In seconds, we ran up the stairs to the room and saw the flies. There were thousands of flies. Every surface was covered in them, including our kids. I ushered them down the stairs and grabbed the plastic and metal fly swatters that we kept hanging on a nail in the kitchen. For the next 20 or so minutes, which is the wife, and I killed as many flies as we could, swatters in both hands as we walked through the room. The window was so thick with them that you couldn't even see the moon outside. Soon, there were fly corpses everywhere. A few that we missed were buzzing around angrily, but we had killed the largest part of them, and they crunched under our feet as we walked across the living room. S went down to comfort the kids, assess their well-being, and put them to bed in the living room. I grabbed a broom and dustpan and went back upstairs to dispose of the dead bodies. There was not a dead or live fly to be seen. Every single one of them had vanished completely. Even the swatters were impeccably clean, as if they'd never been used only moments before. I called out to S and she joined me in the kids' room. She was as perplexed as I was. We didn't shrug it off. Instead, it made us more vigilant in our attempts to hide the strange goings-on from our kids and attempts to discover what exactly was going on. My daughter and I were talking on the phone about a week ago about her love of horror and slasher films, and I mentioned ghost stories. She said, "I don't like ghost stories." How are you gonna love horror films and then say you don't like ghost stories? Isn't that 90% of horror movies is paranormal ghost movies? Anyways, why not? I asked her. Because of the night of the flies. I was holding the alligator that they flew out of that night. Her story. They were playing zoo and she was giving a tour of the animals. She picked up a hollow plastic alligator that we had brought home from the zoo the week before, and while she was holding it in front of her to show its teeth, flies began pouring out of its mouth. She dropped it on the floor and they kept coming until they all started screaming and we came up the stairs. She added, "I've never forgotten it. It was like the alligator was alive and squirming in my hands and the flies were making it act alive. I still have nightmares about it. I don't like any movies with anything that flies or crawls because I remember the feeling of those flies crawling all over us." I had nothing to say, no words of comfort to give, because I too have a problem with flies to this day. Alright, now I have goosebumps. That one was a little scary. Alright, that one was starting off light. We're going to get into another demon story. This one is from 7 hours ago. These are so recent. I'm fucking terrified. I hope they don't live near me. And this is from Reddit user Burden and Felicity. And it reads, "In honor of Halloween, I thought I'd finally type up this story from Halloween 2015 and share it here. It's long, but I promise it all connects. It's okay, King. We are here for the long stories." Halloween that year was on a Saturday night. Last minute, I decided to attend a friend's board game themed party. I drew a Ouija board on an old white t-shirt with a Sharpie. It turned out great. And I had a nice time at the party. Okay, that reminds me, really quick side note. So I'm going to a party tonight and I waited until the last minute. Again, every year I do this. To get a costume because I didn't think there was anything going on. So I was like, I'm not going to spend money on a costume if there's nothing going on, you know? But now there's something going on and I need to get a costume. So I think I'm going to be Scooby-Doo and the person I'm going with is going to be Shaggy. And I'm going to I'm just going to get like a brown dress because we're going to a bar. So like, I don't want to like overly dress up, you know? So I'm going to wear a brown dress and then I'm going to use like face paint from Spirit Halloween to paint, hopefully, the Scooby-Doo dog tag collar on and then just like do my face makeup. I couldn't find any dog ears, but I think it would be great. Anyways, back to this guy's story. So he's got a Ouija board drawn on a white t-shirt and he went to the party, had a great time. The next day, Sunday, November 1st, I had a typical hungover Sunday. I left the costume on the floor in a pile of laundry that I was too lazy to pick up. I'm in bed that night with my dog and her eyes start swelling up out of nowhere. Like it was huge and she couldn't see. Her whole face was swelling. I panic and rush out to take her to the emergency vet. I go to get her out of the car at the vet, except when I do, all of the swelling is gone and she's completely fine. Being young and poor at the time, I decided to skip the emergency vet and went back home since my dog seemed completely normal. We get back in bed, and a couple of minutes later my dog's face starts doing the same thing, just swelling up out of nowhere. I rush back to the emergency vet, and this time, even though the swelling disappeared again, I decide to admit her to the vet to get her checked out. They run tests and give her fluids and check for insect bites, but nothing showed up. She was completely fine. This one is creepy. I'm remembering this one as I'm reading it. This one is fucking creepy. We go back home. It's late, I pass out, and so does my dog. No more face swelling. Cut to 3:30 a.m. I wake up and my dog is sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall where my closet is and doing a low growl. If your dog starts growling at something out of nowhere in the middle of the night, I am fucking out. I don't care if I'm at my own house, I'm leaving. You listen to the animals because they can see and hear shit that we cannot. And even if they can't, I'm fucking leaving. I'm not having any dog growl at a fucking dark closet in the middle of the night. Hell no. I look in the direction of the closet and the door is open. And inside the closet, I see this dark, black, gray, misty thing furiously clawing at my clothes on the hanger and making them swing back and forth. Terrified, I couldn't find my voice to scream, so I just lifted my hands in the air and slammed them down on the comforter to scare it away. It turned and looked at me. It didn't really have a face though, just looked like a hooded black hole, and then it vanished through the black wall of the closet. I didn't know how to process it. I thought it was maybe seeing shit, so I just sat motionless, wrapped as tightly as possible in my comforter until it was light out. I burned the Ouija board costume the next day and smudged with some sage just to be safe. That apartment was in a building built in the early 1900s, and I saw lots of ghosts after that. Every 6 months or so I would wake up, always between 3 and 4 a.m., and see a figure in my room. All of the other ones I saw were more neutral in terms of their energy. They were more white and misty and had faces that weren't dark and faceless like the first one. I would ask them, please leave me alone, and they would disappear, pretty harmless. I still don't quite know if what I saw was real or just my mind playing tricks on me late at night. The one part that makes me think it was real was my dog's face swelling. I FaceTimed my mom that night. She saw my dog's face too and told me to go to the vet. So I didn't imagine that. But was that the demon attacking my dog or just a coincidence? I'm a rational person, but I swear that Ouija costume opened up some sort of portal in that bedroom. I've since moved to another state and live in a brand new building. Haven't seen anything since moving there. That one is scary, dude. I don't know. The fucking clawing at the clothes in the closet and then just like to look at you. Woo! Hell no. Hell no. Okay, this one is a really long one. This one is from 2 days ago and it is from Reddit user Paulo Delane and it is called Terror in Paradise. This one is like another demonic possession type one. Okay, I have my Roku screensaver on right now, and every time I keep looking at the TV out of the corner of my peripheral, and it keeps cutting to this one wallpaper. I have them like rotating through like a series of like Halloween pictures that I didn't choose, and it cuts to this one scarecrow one, which is like a girl with like green glowing eyes, and it's fucking freaking me out. Anyways, okay, Terror in Paradise. When I was 10 years old, we went to live in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. Great weather, wonderful beaches, we had a nice large garden, and the street we lived in was full of flower trees. An idyllic setting where it's hard to imagine any darkness. But it was there where I lived the most terrifying experience of my life. There was a girl with us at the school bus, let's say her name's Elle. She was 2 years older than me, her big sister was 15, and everybody agreed she was beautiful, more or less ignoring the feelings of her younger sister. No wonder Elle was always quite shy and seemed introverted. No matter how much people preferred the looks of the older sister, Elle was beautiful. She had amazing long legs and a very sweet smile. Her huge dark eyes seemed to spark in her face. Elle started talking to me in the bus and we became closer. Even her mom said she was used to preferring younger friends because she felt somehow intimidated by people of her own age. Dude, same. I don't prefer younger people. That sounds a little creepy, but I'm definitely intimidated by them. One day, Elle invited me to her house. We lived on the same street, no more than 3 or 4 blocks away. I remember thinking how beautiful the street was, colorful with petals from the tree on its side. Her house was nice, but mostly what I liked was the idea of having a teenager as a friend. Elle, her older sister, and me went to her room and started playing cards. It was a nice room, shady, with shelves of games and books against a wall. We were having fun for a while when she looked towards me and told me I was cheating. I told her I wasn't and we kept on playing. I thought it was a dumb joke because I was focused on my cards and not nearly looking at hers. Then again, she looks to my side, her face getting really annoyed and repeats, "I told you to stop cheating." I denied, indignant, and looked puzzled at her sister. Her sister shrugged, surprised as me. The third time, Elle was giving an angry glance, but I realized she wasn't looking at me, just beside me. Stop cheating! I felt mortified, and the older sister started arguing that she saw I wasn't cheating. We expected an answer, but Elle's head lifted towards the ceiling, and then her eyes rolled up. I'm tearing up here. I could just see the white of her huge eyes highlighted by the darkness of her ebony skin. Her arms started shaking up and down. We heard a hoarse voice coming from her mouth. "Get me out of here." In one jump, her sister and I were standing, hearts pounding, panicked. Elle kept on repeating, "Get me out of here," with this strange voice as we ran to the door. I really wanted to run away, but was too afraid to leave the room and to leave her sister. Her sister started shouting, "Mom, Dad, please, come, please!" I stopped thinking, only feeling horror, and I also started calling for my mom and dad. I felt surprised at my own voice and my absurd call. For a second, I blushed, thinking about calling my mom and dad when my parents were blocks away. Elle's parents arrived running. The dad ran to his child, still on the floor, blank-eyed, begging with this awful voice to get her out of there. The mother stopped at the threshold, her eyes wide opened. The dad called Elle's name, shook her, but nothing changed. He grabbed her by the elbows and lifted her. He wanted to put her on her feet, react somehow. This was the worst moment, and the image of what happened still haunts me so many years later. He lifted her in the air by her elbows, and her legs kept casually crossed in the air. The man was strong, and I guess at this moment, full of adrenaline. She was tall, with the body of a young woman, but still, she was a 12-year-old kid. Seeing this man holding his daughter in the same position she was before while sitting on the floor just horrified me. He put her back on the floor, and she finally reacted. Her muscles in her face seemed to suddenly relax, and she had this surprised look on her face when she asked smoothly what was going on. Then I just remember things going very fast. The mother took me to the living room as she called my parents asking to pick me up. The older sister was crying after the shock, the dad trying to calm her and Elle, who didn't seem to quite understand what was going on. My dad arrived in a few moments, and I felt so terribly relieved. We went home, and I kept on shaking while I told my parents what had happened. My dad said it was probably just a seizure and tried reassuring me. It somehow worked, and I managed to somehow rationalize what I saw. Still, I kept on shaking for a while and expected to see her on the floor, cross-legged, hand-shaking, and asking to get her out of there in every dark corner of my room. In the next days, Elle didn't go to school, to my huge relief. I don't think I would have been able to look at her. In fact, I even avoided looking at her sister. My parents had talked to hers and told me she was having medical exams to find out what was going on. Even talking about her made me very nervous. 1 week or so later, my mom woke me up at dawn because I had promised I would go jogging with her. Fortunately, my mom's jogging only lasted a few days. We started running in the nice warmth before the sun rose. We arrived near Elle's house. I felt so terrified, I just grabbed my mom's arm. I wasn't able to stop staring at the house, and even though my mom kept telling me what had happened to my friend was just a health problem, I just imagined her getting out of the house, her huge eyes turned towards the stars, and the deep voice coming out of her throat. A few days later, some friends and neighbors came to our house asking for help. Elle was lost. She had taken her bike and left for a little ride 2 hours before. Many people were walking around the neighborhood calling her name. I felt my heart pounding. I was genuinely scared for her. She could have had an accident or a seizure. But I was also scared of finding her, crouched in an unexpected place and ready to ask me to get her out of there. The search was not very long because after half an hour, she appeared pedaling in the middle of the street covered in mud. Her eyes stared at emptiness, and it took 2 or 3 people to stop her. Suddenly, Elle reacted, looking at all of us astonished and asking, again, what was going on. My mom took me to the house. She said Elle was back and there was no sense in bothering her. Her parents told mine in an evening call that she was fine, but didn't recall what was going on at the house, even less where she had been. She wasn't hurt, so that's what counted. She didn't go back to school for the rest of the term. It took me a while to feel better when I went near her house. Then vacations arrived, and little by little, I felt less terrified about the memory. My parents were right, she probably just had some sort of seizures, and after being medicated, she would be perfectly fine. When we went back to school, I was totally reassured and could even say hi to Elle's sister with a smile. Elle didn't go back to school, and our parents said she was at a hospital. 6 months later, we had left the wonderful country. One of the things I remembered most over the years, more accurately than the long walks at the Botanic Park, the days at the beach, and the endless bike rides, was still Elle's blank face while her arm shook and she repeated her scary litany. Years later, I decided to study psychology and graduated. I remember so many cases we've seen, and I realized what happened with Elle seemed more like a hepiphrenic psychosis than just seizures. I had the final explanation of the horror that had haunted me years ago. I'd always been very rational, but at this time of my life, my skepticism was at its top. I always had to find explanations to everything that had to be coherent with science. Needless to say, I'm an atheist. I loved questioning the hardest cases of psychological trouble, especially if they had any explanation I could see as superstitious. I had a friend with 20 years of experience as a psychologist, with many patients and quite a trajectory. We were just chatting about interesting cases, and I told him about what happened with Elle. I told him I was pretty sure it had to be psychosis, but I wanted his opinion. He looked straight into my eyes and said he didn't think so. I insisted on differential diagnoses, explaining how it couldn't be any other mental disease. He asked me if before this episode there had been any other signs of psychosis. Not that I knew. Then he asked me a weird question. What did we all feel at the moment? Pure horror was my answer. His diagnosis, even if it had nothing to do with our profession or studies, was possession. Rare, but he'd seen it before. Nevertheless, that is another story. Oh, that one was scary. That one was really scary. I don't want to deal with any demons, but I especially do not want to deal with any people that have demons. Like, I'm sorry, I don't care if you're my freaking mom. If you're possessed, you are now on your own. I'm out. I do not want that shit embedding itself into me. No freaking thank you. Alright, I think we're gonna wrap this video up with one more story, so let's make it a good one. The subreddit is so weird because there's actually like a lot of threads about people trying to like get information about how they can contact the devil and like other demons and shit. Why are you trying to do that? Like, I don't even understand why you would try to contact, like, a regular spirit, but why do you need to fuck with the devil? I think we should just leave him there, you know? This is a bad word, but this one is called midget. They are little people, which is what we will refer to them. But it just says, when I was a child, I used to see a midget shadow with a knife at nighttime for years every night, and it was very scary. That's the whole thread. Very nice. Okay, I think this is the story that we're gonna wrap it up with. This one is from Reddit user the K number 1641. I've wanted to tell this story for a while, and I've typed out drafts a few times in the past, but never finalized and published it. I'm finally ready, and this is my ghost story. When I was 16 years old, I returned home at around 10 p.m. from a night at a friend's house. I wasn't tired, and so I decided to play video games for a while before getting into bed. My parents' room was straight across the hallway, and my mom came in to say hello and say goodnight. This was typical, as my parents were almost always watching late-night TV or movies. And when she left, she closed my bedroom door, but hadn't latched it shut completely. Some time passes, about 20 to 30 minutes, and I'm still cranking out on video games when I see my door opening again out of the corner of my eye. Believing that my mom was coming back in for some reason, I turned to see a pale figure of a man standing in my doorway. This man appeared to be in his mid-40s or early 50s, but also had a weathered look to him, like someone who had been through a rough time with either an illness or just a hard life in general. It was his piercing eyes that scared me on a level that I had never experienced before. This man stood still for only a few moments, possibly less than 10 seconds, before turning and walking down the dark hallway and out of sight. The fear that I felt was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, and although in reality the following most likely only took place in a minute at most, for me it felt like much longer. Time seemed to slow to the point where I could feel and hear each heartbeat in my head, and I felt as though I couldn't catch my breath. It took every ounce of strength I had to crawl to my parents' bedroom door, as I felt completely drained of energy. Dude, I'm just picturing someone in the middle of the night, like a kid, just like literally crawling on their hands and knees and opening like a parent's bedroom door. If I fucking saw that, I'd be like, oh hell no, you're done. You're done. Get out. When I finally reached their door, still lying up on the floor, I lifted my arm to knock, and the first couple attempts were so incredibly weak that I'm not even sure they made a sound. Eventually, time seemed to return to its normal state, and I pounded on the base of the door repeatedly. My mom came to open the door and expected to see me standing there, but when she saw me on the floor, she immediately knew something was wrong. She would later describe the look on my face, pale and streaming tears, as a look of pure horror. She helped me to their bed as I claimed, as I believed at the time, that there was a man inside our house. At first, both of my parents believed I had fallen asleep and had a nightmare, until we all heard, oh my god, I'm getting goosebumps, very loud banging from coming downstairs of our raised ranch home. My father pulled his gun from his dresser and began to head downstairs. Bless that man. For whatever reason, my mom and I followed him and waited on the stairs as he checked the downstairs floor for an intruder. We never found anyone, and all windows and doors were still locked, making it impossible for someone to have entered and escaped. The night this happened, it was snowing rather heavily, and it was clear that the only footprints around our house were from my own from earlier which had already been covered with fresh snowfall. I had other experiences in this house leading up to this event over the course of 3 years, but nothing had been remotely close or intense as this event. This event changed my view on a lot, and I became very interested in the paranormal afterward. One thing is certain though, I never want to see another ghost/spirit, as I've had my fill. Alright guys, I think those were some awesome stories to kick off this Halloween weekend, and I hope you guys are going to have a safe and fun time out if you are choosing to do so. Thank you guys so much for watching, and do not forget to subscribe for all my future videos because the Christmas videos will be coming out very shortly, although my Halloween decorations will be staying up until literally after Thanksgiving. Have a very spooky rest of your night, and until then, do not forget to stay smiling. Peace.